everybody, to Flat Earth Nation. It is a Flat Earth Nation. Don't let them tell you anything else unless they are willing to debate you in a fair and honest way.
Okay, there we go. Thank you very much. I am willing to debate you in a fair and honest way, respectful of one another, and would thoroughly enjoy the opportunity to learn from such a discussion. So thank you, and we'll continue.
The majority of this show today is going to be about the history of the fax machine, pentatelegraph. It's a copy of the ink it used, the quality that it could use. This was the first fax sent in 1862, over 10 miles, I think 8 miles. Picture of children reading a faxed newspaper in the 1930s. But before we get to that, I have some things I want to, that aren't really a part of a long message, that I want to just pass on. How many people were called apostle?
Well, I don't know. How many?
It's a very specific word. It's only used for apostle or apostles. It's number 652. 652 in your Greek Strong's Concordance. How many people were called apostles? Well, there were 21 men called apostles. 2 of them are unnamed. Timothy was called an apostle.
Who called all of these men apostles? I want to know who called them apostles. Did the apostles call them apostles, or did Paul call them apostles? Because, you see, that could get tricky.
Silas was called an apostle. Epaphroditus was called an apostle.
Was Constantine called an apostle? Because he had a vision too. Very similar to Paul's, and look at what it did for Christianity. I mean, we wouldn't be here today without good old Constantine. So, I mean, if we're going to go beyond the 12 and we're going to make Paul the 13th apostle, I think we should let Constantine be the 14th if his name was one of these other of the 20-something. I don't know if it is or not, but I'm going to hold that thought for now. But we need to get to the bottom of this, because evidently, if this be true, and I'm not going to say that I know better, because I don't, but I do know this: if it is true, we need to get to work. Otherwise, Paul and the rest of his gang are all going to be up in heaven sitting on the floor, because they ain't going to have a throne in heaven when there's only 12 for the apostles. Let me ask you a question. Of all of those apostles, how's come whenever it came time to replace Judas, there was only 2 men available to select from who were even eligible to meet the criteria of what is necessary to be an apostle? Did all those other 22 men meet all that criteria? I don't think so. I just don't believe it's the truth. I think it's a lie. I think the world is filled with liars. And I think that due to black magic, some of us think that the book that we hold in our hands is God. And you don't got to get very deep into all that to figure out that, you know, the Word is God, and Bible is the Word, and Word is salvation. Salvation is under the Lord. You know, there's some room for some monkey play up in there. Because now the Bible is an idol. It's a wooden graven image. That's why he had to plant it in your heart, where it couldn't get screwed up and twisted up. And that's where the truth is. You've known it since you were a little child, the difference between right and wrong. I know I have. So when I say you, to all of whoever may hear my voice, I'm speaking to those of you who are like kind to me. And the way you know that if you're one of the ones that is like kind to me is you will be confused by the question and you won't know the answer. Because the only people that are not like kind to me, they know exactly who they are and they do know the answer. They're part of that secret club that Carlin was telling you about. Only it ain't a club like all that. So, back to the 22 apostles. I am really looking forward to learning of the 22 apostles, and, I can't wait to find out where the rest of the scriptures of these 22 apostles are, and I'm dying to know if when we get to those scriptures, because, it's important to know what the apostles had to say. Quite frankly, as best I can tell, as soon as Yeshua leaves the scene, we ain't got but a handful of pages. We're lucky if we got 12 pages from apostles left after that, because the rest of it's all Paul and Cerinthius, according to the Catholic Church on page 377 of one of their books tucked away there. I've seen it before, where it shows that they acknowledge that a mystery school magician named Cerinthius is the author of Revelation. Yeah. So, if it looks like Revelation is unfolding before your very eyes and you cannot believe it could possibly happen like that, I want you to imagine just for a moment, if you were a Phoenician and you could live for longer than a regular person because you weren't just a man but a human, an alteration of man, that you could make plans like that. More than a 5 or 10 year plan, but like a 400 or 500 year plan, or a 200 to 400 year plan, or a this reset to that reset plan. Because as far as I know, there's ain't but 12 apostles ever. No more, no less. Judas left the group and needed to be replaced. 2 men were available. I think it was Bartholomew and Matthias, if I'm not mistaken. I haven't looked in a long time, but I do know that there was 2. And one of them didn't get chosen because they couldn't have 13. It would be inappropriate to have 13. As a matter of fact, none of them would want to be the 13th apostle, because that's sort of like the devil's number. So, if Paul wants to claim that glory for himself, unto himself, since he's the only one that calls himself an apostle, I say let him have it. I don't mean to venerate him or think that he's worthy of being an apostle. I'm just saying let him call himself whatever he wants. But I'm not going to worship the man. And I don't care if he makes fun of me for refusing to eat dead flesh and to touch dead things and to eat and drink the blood of dead animals that were killed by either me or my willingness to eat it. I could go on and on. The sins just don't stop. The prophets were constantly telling the children of Israel that they had strayed, that they were not in alignment with God's will, that they needed to repent of their sin, and that they needed to do what? They needed to stop sacrificing their children to Moloch, passing their children through the fire. That's a lot of things. And sometimes that was probably very legitimately exactly that, and in modern days, we do things a little more sterile. We put them in front of a false god pretending to be a judge and just let them have their way and determine the future of your offspring. As if they were made for the benefit and pleasure of other individuals, for their use and enjoyment, entitlement, due to their positions of nobility, of course. Which I don't even know how you have that when you're not even a registered, documented foreign agent working in somebody else's country. And I ain't paying taxes back to the Queen either. You can't just keep all the money in every direction. Come on now. if I can't claim it from the IRS because you're taking the deductible, then why ain't you claiming it? Why is it that when I leave a restaurant, I get a check instead of a bill? Well, it's because I'm not supposed to pay it. It's a check. Supposed to tender it to the IRS so that they can make sure that the person who serves me receives their compensation. Since there's no money in this country, since we're acting under martial law and have been ever since good old Abe. And he wasn't even no apostle neither. Nope, he was not. No more than Constantine or Spall or any of their friends spinning around on balls in space, worshiping Baal with Paul. The antithesis of all things Christ came to share with us.
Junius was called an apostle. Andronicus, Barnabas, Paul, the Apostle Paul, and the 12. There's your 21. Those are the ones that...
See, I think that rather than an apostle, I think what happened with Paul is since his mama was the richest woman in Rome, you see, I think that what happened is that Paul gave up his opportunity to one day become an apostle after spending years of work like the rest of the apostles, traveling with Messiah and learning from him, because he said, I can't do that. I've got too much money. I'm a wealthy man. That ain't got nothing to do with the fact that he's a Herodian. Nothing to do with the fact that back in the day, rather than studying nonsense about fake stuff at school, they were actually educated and they were crafty, and they understood that the use of words was actually the most powerful thing in this world, and that by the use of words that they could confound and enslave men in their hearts, mind, and souls, and of course they have. And when you would go to school for this, it was referred to as the rhetorical arts. Paul was a rhetorical artist. What that means is he can talk in circles without going anywhere until the sun goes down and still not say anything for hours. And you just be like a bobblehead doll. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah. Some people call it circle jerk. You know, I don't know what everybody calls it. I call it nonsense. I call it, Paul, how's come you didn't just give up your credentials like all of the other apostles did whenever they went into a new community in order for them to be received? That they were to tender their letter from James that provided the community with the assurance that you weren't some fake liar just coming to their community to deceive them and screw them all up and tell their women to shut up and go home because they didn't matter. Paul, Apostle Paul. Come on now. You cannot get out of Acts without knowing that there's no way under the sun that Paul's an apostle. And if you do, then it's not possible to stumble through the rest of those scriptures with integrity and say that you can't see him fumbling all over a bunch of nonsense, calling the chosen men of Messiah to be the apostles a bunch of dumbass dipshits that just didn't have it together enough that thank goodness Paul come along to fix them. And who's deceived in this matter? Why is it not possible that the Creator is smarter and above the workings of men, and that no matter what they do, no matter how they try to bastardize His word, that they are still not able to overcome the truth of Him that is written within our hearts? And the principle of the vampire has to tell the truth at the door. You can see that throughout all aspects of our society. It wouldn't be there if it wasn't a thing. It would not be there if it was not a thing. You would not be required to sin 3 times before you can even approach a bench at a mock kangaroo court hearing to have a word one with the individual who you're turning over your estate of given to you to care for by Yeshua to a stranger. You have to first lie and falsely identify yourself as someone who you're not, because you're not dead, and they're on their paperwork it says you're dead. Well, then automatically you've also associated yourself to the dead. That's necromancy. There's 2 sins right there. But then before he'll talk to you, he wants you to take an oath. 3 times you're out. That's how come you have no authority in court. By the time Paul got to his 3rd conversion lie in Acts, he done gave it up. You're supposed to be able to discern the wheat from the tares, the good scripture from the bad, the truth from the lie. That's why Yeshua was emphatic about telling us right out of the bat at the Sermon on the Mount, be careful for slippery people who are going to slide up in here the second I leave, pretending to be like me, telling y'all all about how you need to be what? Everything that I'm not. And that someday I might have to look at you and say, I don't even know you. Honestly, I don't mean to be ugly, but I simply don't know you. My children, it's not in their heart that they would wish to bring harm to another creature. It's not in their heart to follow a voice of another liar who's pretending to be me like all the rest. I would like to know how it is people think that the false Messiah wouldn't be in the scriptures. Why would it not be as part of the scripture? It's a tool. It's a lesson book for life. Everything to do. I said years ago when I first found out about crooked scumbags pretending to be judges, and I really realized a lot of things about how this is all a very spiritual matter. Oh goodness, I just forgot what I was going to say. Oh, yeah. I realized back then that, and I was wrong when I thought this, I thought back then that the only difference in the world that we walk in today and the way it was when Yeshua was here was that we got electricity. Besides that, the systems of governance, the way that they operate, the control mechanisms, and all of this, it's all the same. It's all exactly identically the same. Admiralty law. They couldn't touch Yeshua. That's how come he could walk on water. He was above the lowest form of law known to man that we surrender ourselves to. As a matter of fact, the entirety of the scriptures, Old Testament and New, you can't hardly get through there without it explaining to you that Yahuwah has no patience for persons. He is no respecter of persons. He does not like people who are fake. He doesn't want people hiding behind masks. He doesn't want people pretending to be people that they're not. He doesn't want people acting under different names. He doesn't want people committing necromancy. He gave you a name. Christ's name for me is Bradley Keith. That's my Christian name. It's my name. my tribe or family, however you want to look at it. Some people might call it the House of Brussenhand, but that's not my name. And that's why I'm not going to take it in vain. Christ gave me a name. It's Bradley Keith. That's my father's name. There's the family's name, Brussenhand. That's not my name to abuse, because other people that have that name might not like me using it in a way that they don't approve of. And that's how come I'm supposed to be walking through this world exactly as I was made, without a desire to be different, unchanged, because I was made in the image of the one who made me, in a manner that was perfect for my walk, for my sojourn. Someone else made in the same image of the same creator may be different than me, but be perfect for their sojourn. I have severe physical problems, but I know that I am made perfect. And I'm perfectly well to experience all this, because without it, I'm not sure that I would have ever had a chance of making it home. Because I was pretty mad and I was racing in the other direction, away from the truth. I was angry. That doesn't make it right. That makes it what it is. And I'm so utterly grateful that for whatever reason, I got knocked down hard. I ain't gonna get into how hard, it's not relevant. Hard. And that forced me to reevaluate things, because I had no choice, because I've had a lot of time on my hands. And so as I go through these things, these are some of the questions that I have. I don't know if other people have these questions or not, but I have them, and I am grateful that there's someone else out there who's willing to entertain them in an honest and fair debate. And now, I don't like that word. Let me just say that right up front. I don't want to have a debate. I don't want to win a discussion. I want to learn. I want to learn where I am in error so that I can fix it ASAP, without delay. That's my primary concern. Because before I can be concerned if somebody else who thinks there's 22 apostles is in error and wrong, I need to be concerned if it's not me that's in error and wrong, which is what I'm very concerned about, more so, because it's not my responsibility to be concerned about other people. But I can't get anyone to have this conversation with me, and that's why I'm just so grateful someone is willing to do this. But I'd like to have it as a conversation. I don't mind having it privately. We can have it publicly. I'll tell you that I'm not nearly as well studied in all the nuances of the scriptures as other people, but I've thumbed through them before. I think I can speak to my point without, like I say, I'm not anybody special. I'm just someone that's got some questions. I'm a man with some questions. Like, why would a man want to refer to himself as an altered man? In an altered state, a human. It's not a man, but an alteration of man. Why? Why do we succumb and surrender ourselves to motor vehicle codes when ain't none of us got motors under the hood, because we all have engines using gas? Pay the fine. Well, sure. These are some of the questions that I have. I've got a lot more questions. A lot of questions. But that's enough for today.
I could find. So I wanted to pass that on because I didn't know where to go with it, and I didn't want to waste all the research I did on it. you know how that goes. So here we got the children reading a fax newspaper. I'm saying it was 1862, and the ink was blue. This is the first commercial
1492
what they could call a fax machine, and this is it.
What the fax machine in 1860? Wow, it's crazy talk.
The picture of it as it became in commercial use in the 1860s, you know, right around the time of the American Civil War. Want to make a point of the 1,000 years, the 999 year leases that I mentioned on November 12th.
I'm not done with my questions. That's another one. That's a very sound, solid point my friend just made there. Those star forts have 999 year leases on them. It took me a minute to wrap my head around what this man is trying to explain to you people, but even though I disagree with him on a number of issues, just like everybody else in the world, I agree with him on so many, and I so much appreciate the fact that he's sharing, because I've learned from him, and I've learned, whether it's true or not, I do not know, but I've learned that nobody had ever helped me to fathom the concept that it could be possible that we were born into the time after Armageddon and before the Great White Throne Judgment in that 1,000 years. Now, see, I don't think we're there, because they threw 1,000 years in to fake it, and I believe that's for what's to come, when people are expecting the return of Messiah 1,000 years early, because the evil ones of the world were able to take the prophets of old, weave them into a compilation of prophecies, and tell a story out of it that they themselves could engineer and bring about a false end of the world. And that would leave Christians hosed, because they'd be like, wow, I didn't even get raptured or nothing, and I don't know about dying because it don't look like Jesus is coming, and everybody's just laughing at me now because obviously all the Christians are dead. I done got my stamp, but I was the last one to get mine, and I almost got killed, but I didn't know, and Christians left, and so it's all good. That 1,000 years. It actually says in the scripture something about Jesus is like, whoa, under those kids. That's going to be a difficult time for those ones. Because when you think about it, that be the case, that means we're not experiencing the new heaven, the kingdom of heaven on earth with Messiah as king in the physical world that we live in. That we would be missing that. Because I've always wondered, it talks about how life continues during that time. And I've always wondered about that, but I've never wondered enough to put myself into that situation. Because history told us that had not happened yet. Well, I didn't know at the time that was all lies. Now I do. Now I know for a fact that sometime within about 200 years ago, most everybody in this world disappeared, and it got started over, and nobody bothered telling any of us. And that's how come you can go into downtown Denton, Texas, and look at that square and see that Tartarian construction they claim was put there in 1896, which is an absolute lie. It's underground and not just by the original 12 to 15 feet like I thought. I'm telling you, it's way under the ground, more than that. I know you can go to the corner bookstore there, though, in Texas, where they don't build basements, and walk in there, and the first thing you're going to do is walk downstairs into their basement. And when you get down there below street level in the basement of the bookstore on the corner of the square in Denton, Texas, when you First step onto the floor, step your foot a little bit extra hard, and you will observe that is a subfloor. That's not the ground floor. You will observe at the bank, the white building on the corner where the windows are all at street level, at the surface of ground level. You can look through the windows. You can see the slope in the street. You can go to the ball arch that they have right there at the square in Denton. It's the most interesting thing ever. They call it the Confederate Arch. And what I'm so impressed by is this. A full, 35 years or so in advance of the courthouse being built, somebody was wise enough, some ladies evidently, to put an arch at the front dead center of where the walkway up to the courthouse steps would be, also squared exactly where the sidewalk to the street would be, where the arch was perfectly placed in around 1860 something, 35 years before they built the courthouse that the archway leads to. And go up to Cook County, you're going to find the same Tertullian construction. You can fly over to Fannin County, you're going to find the same nonsense. Over there, they got a real fancy story, though, because right now, you can see that all of the siding is, or not siding, but the exterior of the building is ripped off. Masonry construction behind there. There's no fascia facade on it. All ripped off, and it says there that the building was just rebuilt, reconstructed, or redone, remodeled in 2015. And I'm thinking, well, maybe they put that there before they finished. No, they did, and then they tore it all back down. And so I'm getting ready to find me some pictures of what it looked like after they reconstructed it and before they made it look as stupid as it does today, as well as pictures of what it looked like before they reconstructed it. And if you have any pictures like that or know where I could find them, I would really like to have some, because my wife and I are touring Texas, and we're going around and we're documenting all of the bullshit construction that's been stolen by people who claim that it's theirs when it's not. What I mean to say is all of the ancient architecture that's still all over Texas. I mean, so far, every county seat that I've been to has a Tertullian building stuck right in the middle of it. And the one thing I'm grateful for, at least, that it doesn't have all the Phoenician vomit all over it like a bunch of the other stuff does.